Commander Zekthor sat in the metal chair and stared at the small recording device on the table. The lights in the room were dim, just the way he liked them. His blue-scaled hands shook a little as he reached for the water glass. The war correspondent, across from him, Lyra Vex, waited quietly. She had been trying to get this interview for 3 years. "You want to know about the humans?" Zekthor said. His voice was deep and rough. "Everyone wants to know about the humans now. But back then, we thought they were nothing special." Lyra nodded and leaned forward. "Tell me about the first time you saw them fight." Zekthor closed his yellow eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they looked tired. It was at New Denver, a small mining colony on the edge of their space. "We thought it would be easy." He paused and took a sip of water. The liquid helped his dry throat. "The High Command called them primitive mammals. We had reports about their world, about how they fought each other all the time. Their planet had hundreds of different nations that could not agree on anything. They had wars over resources, over land, over ideas that made no sense to us." Lyra made notes on her tablet. "What made you think they would be easy to defeat?" "Everything," Zekthor said with a bitter laugh. "We had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. Every time it was the same. Our ships were bigger, our weapons were stronger, our technology was better. We would arrive, destroy their fleets, and they would surrender. Clean and simple." The old warrior shifted in his chair. His back still hurt from wounds he got during the war. "Humans were supposed to be no different. Actually, we thought they would be easier. Their ships were smaller than ours. Their weapons looked weak. They had no unified military command. Each of their colonies seemed to make its own decisions. But something went wrong," Lyra said. "Everything went wrong," Zekthor replied, "but not at first. When we arrived at New Denver, it looked exactly like we expected. One small orbital station, a few mining platforms, maybe 50,000 people living on the surface. No big defense fleet waiting for us." He stared at the wall behind Lyra as he remembered. "Admiral Kesseran commanded our fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and support ships. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. We came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, just like we always did. The humans sent us a message," Zekthor continued. "A man named Jake Morrison. He said he was the captain of their defense force. He told us to leave or they would fight us." Admiral Kesseran laughed when he heard this. One human captain threatening an entire Valonian fleet. Lyra waited for him to continue. She could see the pain in his eyes. "Morrison told us we had 1 hour to leave." 1 hour. Kesseran decided, to show these humans what happened when they threatened the Valonian Empire. He ordered all ships to advance and destroy the orbital station. Zekthor's hands clenched into fists. That was when the first human ship appeared. It came out of nowhere, from behind an asteroid, then another one, then another. Suddenly there were dozens of them, all around us, hiding in the asteroid field. "They had been waiting," Lyra said. "Not just waiting, hunting. These humans had turned the entire asteroid field into a trap. They knew we were coming somehow. They had been preparing for weeks, maybe months." The old commander stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the station rotated. We had never seen anything like it. Other species we fought would meet us in open space, fleet against fleet, honor combat. But these humans, they hid like predators. They used the asteroids for cover, moving between them like they were born in space. "What happened next?" Lyra asked. Zekthor turned back to her. "Captain Morrison's ship was small, maybe 1/10 the size of our cruisers, but it moved like a living thing. It would disappear behind an asteroid, then pop out somewhere else and fire at us. Their weapons were weak, but they aimed for our engines, our sensor arrays, our communication systems." He sat back down heavily. And they were not alone. There was a woman pilot, Lisa Chen. Her ship was even smaller, just a mining vessel with weapons bolted on. She flew straight at our flagship, firing everything she had. Our gunners hit her ship, tore it apart, but she kept coming. "She crashed into your ship?" Lyra asked. "Worse. She overloaded her reactor, turned her ship into a bomb, took out Admiral Kesseran's cruiser and half the bridge crew. I was on the command deck when it happened. The explosion was so bright I could not see for minutes. Zekthor rubbed his eyes. That was when I knew these humans were different. Lisa Chen had no chance of survival. Her ship was destroyed. She was going to die anyway. But instead of trying to escape, she used her death as a weapon. No other species we fought had ever done that. But surely one ship could not stop your entire fleet, Lyra said. No, but it was not one ship. Every few minutes, another human ship would appear. They came from different directions, used different tactics. Some were military vessels, some were cargo ships with guns attached, some were mining ships like Chen's. They all fought like they had nothing to lose. The commander's voice grew quieter. There was a man named Pete Rodriguez. He commanded a group of small fighters. They used the mining laser platforms as weapons, turning industrial equipment into cannons. They would fire at us, then hide behind the asteroids before we could shoot back. On the planet's surface, a woman named Amy Watson was organizing the ground defenses. She was just a sergeant, but she commanded the defense like a general. Every building, every piece of equipment, every road was turned into a weapon or a trap. Zekthor drank more water. His throat was getting dry again. What scared us most was that they would not give up. We destroyed their orbital station. We shot down their fighters. We landed troops on the planet, but they kept fighting. Every human seemed willing to die rather than surrender. How long did the battle last? Lyra asked. 3 days. 3 days to take one small mining colony. We should have captured it in 3 hours. Zekthor shook his head. When it was over, we had lost 15 ships and nearly 2,000 crew members. The humans lost everything, but they made us pay for every meter of ground, every building, every life. He looked directly at Lyra. Do you know what Captain Morrison said to me when we finally captured him? He was wounded. His ship was destroyed. His people were dead or captured. I expected him to beg for mercy or curse us. Instead, he smiled and said, "This was just the beginning. Wait until you see what we do when you attack Earth." That must have been unsettling, Lyra said. It was terrifying, Zekthor admitted, because I believed him. In 3 days, these humans had shown us tactics we had never seen, courage we had never encountered, and a determination that made no logical sense. They fought like every battle was the last battle they would ever fight. The old warrior was quiet for a long moment. After New Denver, I went to Admiral Kesseran's replacement and told him we should leave human space alone. I said these people were too dangerous to conquer. He laughed at me, just like Kesseran had laughed at Morrison's warning. But the High Command decided to continue the war, Lyra said. They decided to make an example of humanity. They assembled the largest fleet in Valonian history and prepared to attack Earth itself. Zekthor's voice was bitter. They thought overwhelming force would break human resistance. They had no idea what they were about to face. Lyra saved her notes and prepared. For the next part of the interview, she could see that remembering these events was difficult for the old commander, but she needed to hear the whole story. The galaxy needed to understand what had really happened during the Human-Valonian War. Should we continue? She asked gently. Zekthor nodded slowly. Yes. The galaxy needs to know the truth about humans. They need to understand what we learned and why we can never make the same mistake again. Lyra adjusted her recording device and looked at Commander Zekthor. The alien warrior seemed older now, his scales duller than when they started. Tell me about what happened after New Denver, she said softly. Zekthor stared at his hands. The High Command was angry. Very angry. They had never lost so many ships taking a single colony. Admiral Vosek took command of the fleet. He was younger than Kesseran, more aggressive. He wanted to show the humans what real war looked like. So you continued fighting, Lyra said. We had to. The Empire could not look weak. Other species were watching. If humans could resist us, maybe others would try. Zekthor's voice was tired. Vosek ordered attacks on 3 more human colonies. He thought if we hit them fast and hard, they would surrender. The old commander stood and walked around the small room. The second battle was at Harmony Station, a trading post near the Oikyo Edge of human space, we sent only 6 ships this time. We thought we had learned from New Denver. But you had not, Lyra said. No, we had learned the wrong lessons. Zekthor stopped walking and faced her. We expected the humans to hide behind asteroids again, so we brought mining ships to clear the field. We expected them to use converted civilian ships, so we brought more fighters. We expected them to fight to the death, so we brought more troops. What we did not expect was for them to fight completely different. Captain Roy Baker commanded the defense. He did not hide behind asteroids. He did not use converted ships. Instead, he did something we had never seen before. Lyra waited for him to continue. He retreated. As soon as we arrived, the human ships ran away. They fled toward the inner system like cowards. Admiral Vosek was delighted. He thought we had finally scared them. Zekthor's laugh was bitter. We chased them for 2 days. Every time we got close, they would run again. But it was a trap, Lyra said. The biggest trap we had ever seen. Baker was leading us into a maze of space stations, cargo platforms, and communication relays. Everything looked normal from a distance, but when we got close, they all opened fire. Zekthor sat back down heavily. The humans had turned their entire trade route into a weapons system. Every cargo container was a missile. Every communication relay was a gun platform. Every space station was a fortress. We were surrounded by enemies and did not know it until they started shooting. How many ships did you lose? Lyra asked. 4 out of 6, and the 2 that survived were badly damaged. The old warrior rubbed his forehead. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. What do you mean? The human reinforcements arrived, not from where we expected, but from behind us. Colonel Janet Murphy led a fleet of cargo ships that had been following us the whole time. While we were fighting Baker's platforms, Murphy's ships surrounded us. Zekthor's voice grew quieter. These cargo ships were not armed like the ones at New Denver. They were full of soldiers. Murphy's people boarded our ships while we were distracted by the fighting. They came through the airlocks, through the docking ports, even through damaged hull sections. Hand-to-hand combat, Lyra said. Worse than that, the humans fought like wild animals. They used their dead as cover. They set traps in their own ships. Major Danny Torres led one boarding party that fought for 6 hours inside a single cruiser. His men were outnumbered 3-1, but they would not give up. The commander's hands shook as he reached for his water. Torres was wounded 4 times during that fight. A plasma burn on his arm, a cut across his chest, shrapnel in his leg, and a broken rib. But he kept fighting. He led his men from the front, always moving, always attacking. I was on that ship. Zekthor continued. I saw Torres fight. He moved like a dancer, always in motion, never where our weapons were aimed. He would shoot, then roll behind cover, then come up somewhere else. His men followed his example. What impressed me most was how they worked together. Each human seemed to know what the others were thinking. They would split up, then come back together, then split up again. They flowed like water around our defenses. Lyra made notes on her tablet. How did the battle end? It ended when Torres and his men reached the bridge of our flagship. They captured Admiral Vosek and forced him to surrender. But even then, they did not stop fighting until every Valonian soldier laid down their weapons. Zekthor was quiet, for a moment. After the battle, I talked to Torres. He was in the medical bay getting treatment for his wounds. I asked him why his men fought so hard for a simple trading post. He looked at me like I was stupid. What did he say? He said it was not about the trading post. It was about the people who lived there. Families, children, old people who could not fight for themselves. He said every human colony was someone's home, and humans do not let strangers take their homes. The old warrior shook his head. I did not understand then. Valonians fight for the Empire, for glory, for advancement. But humans fight for each other. They fight for people they have never met, just because those people are human too. The Kadia third battle was at Crystal Falls, Zekthor continued. A farming colony with no military value. We thought it would be easy. We were wrong again. What happened there? General Linda Hayes commanded the defense. She was different from the other human commanders. older, more experienced. She had fought in human wars before we arrived. She knew things about warfare that we were just learning. Zekthor stood and walked to the window again. Hayes did not just defend the colony. She attacked us. While we were still approaching the planet, her ships hit us from 6 different directions. She had hidden them in the shadow of the planet's moons. But that was not the strangest part, he continued. The strangest part was that she kept talking to us during the battle. Not threats or demands, but questions. She asked why we wanted to conquer them. She asked what we planned to do with human prisoners. She asked if we had families waiting for us at home. Psychological warfare, Lyra said. More than that. She was trying to understand us, even while fighting us. Captain Beth Parker was one of her pilots. During the battle, Parker's ship was damaged, and she was forced to land on one of our ships. Instead of fighting to the death like we expected, she surrendered. That seems unusual for a human, Lyra said. It was, but Parker did not surrender because she was afraid. She surrendered because she wanted to talk to us. While she was our prisoner, she asked about our families, our homes, our reasons for fighting. She treated our guards like people, not enemies. Zekthor turned back to Lyra. Parker escaped 3 days later. She stole a shuttle and returned to the human lines. But before she left, she told our guards that she understood why we fought, and she hoped they would understand why humans fought too. Did that change anything? It changed everything. Our soldiers started asking questions. If humans could understand us, why were we fighting them? If they were not monsters, why were we trying to kill them? Some of our crew began to doubt the war. The old commander sat down again. But the fighting continued. Hayes and her people held Crystal Falls for 2 weeks. They turned every farm, every building, every road into a battlefield. When we finally took the colony, half the buildings were destroyed and most of the population had escaped. 3 colonies, 3 different tactics, Lyra observed. Exactly. That was what scared us most. Every human commander fought differently. Morrison used surprise and sacrifice. Baker used deception and mobility. Torres used close combat and teamwork. Hayes used psychology and defense. We could not predict what they would do next. And each battle was harder than the last, Zekthor added. The humans were learning from their defeats. They were getting better at fighting us. But we were not getting better at fighting them. Lyra saved her notes. What did the High Command decide to do? Zekthor's expression grew dark. They decided to end the war quickly. They assembled the Grand Fleet, the largest military force in Valonian history. 300 ships, the best commanders, the most advanced weapons. They planned to attack Earth itself and force humanity to surrender. But you knew that would not work, Lyra said. I knew it would be a disaster. But I was just a commander. Nobody listened to my warnings. They thought I was being weak, letting human propaganda affect my judgment. Zekthor's voice was bitter. So we prepared for the greatest battle in Valonian history. We prepared to attack the human homeworld. And you were afraid, Lyra said. I was terrified. Because I had seen what humans could do with small numbers and limited resources. I could not imagine what they would do when fighting for their home, with their entire civilization at stake. Zekthor looked directly at her. I was right to be afraid. The Battle of Sol was unlike anything we had ever experienced. It changed both our species forever. Commander Zekthor was quiet for a long time. Lyra could see the pain in his yellow eyes as he remembered what came next. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. The Grand Fleet was beautiful. 300 ships in perfect formation, stretching across space like a metal river. I had never seen so much firepower in one place. Supreme Admiral Corthan commanded from the flagship Eternal Glory. He was the greatest military mind in Valonian history. You were part of this fleet? Lyra asked. I commanded a heavy cruiser called Thunderstrike. After the colonies, they promoted me. They said I understood human tactics better than most commanders. They were wrong. I understood that humans were dangerous, but I did not understand how dangerous. Zekthor stood and walked to the small table where food had been placed earlier. He picked at some fruit but did not eat much. The journey to Sol took 3 weeks. Every day, Corthan gave speeches about Valonian glory and human weakness. He said we would show the galaxy what happened to species that defied the Empire. But you had doubts, Lyra said. I had nightmares. Every night I dreamed about Jake Morrison's smile, about Lisa Chen's sacrifice, about Danny Torres fighting with broken ribs. I kept thinking about what Captain Parker had said. If humans could understand us, maybe we should try to understand them. The old commander sat back down heavily. When we reached the edge of the Sol system, we expected to find a fortress. Earth was the human homeworld, their most important planet. Surely they would have built massive defenses around it. But that is not what you found, Lyra said. We found nothing. Empty space. A few cargo ships moving between planets, but no military fleet. No defense platforms. No weapons pointed at us. It was like they were not expecting us at all. Zekthor's voice grew puzzled. Corthan was suspicious. He ordered long-range scans of the entire system. What we found confused us even more. Most of the civilian populations had been evacuated from Earth and the other planets. Only military personnel and essential workers remained. They were preparing for a siege, Lyra observed. More than that. They were preparing to turn their entire star system into a battlefield. But we did not understand that yet. We thought they had given up, that they were hiding somewhere and hoping we would leave. The commander reached for his water glass again. His hands were steadier now, but Lyra could see the strain in his face. We advanced slowly, scanning for hidden fleets like the ones we had faced at the colonies. But there was nothing, just empty space and a few scattered ships that ran away when we got close. Then we reached the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. That was where we met Captain Roy Baker again. Lyra looked up from her notes. The same Baker from Harmony Station? The same one, but this time he had more than a few cargo ships. He had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. Every rock bigger than a house had been equipped with engines and guidance systems. They were not asteroids anymore. They were missiles. Zekthor shuddered at the memory. Baker did not attack us directly. Instead, he sent the asteroids at us slowly like a gentle rain. At first, we ignored them. What could rocks do against our shields? But there were thousands of them, all coming from different directions. They overwhelmed your defenses, Lyra said. Worse. They forced us to waste ammunition shooting at rocks while Baker's real ships attacked us from hiding spots throughout the belt. Colonel Janet Murphy was there too, commanding a group of ships that looked like mining vessels but fought like warships. The old warrior stood and paced around the room. The battle in the asteroid belt lasted 4 days. We lost 12 ships not to superior weapons but to tactics we had never seen. The humans used the asteroids as cover, as weapons, and as distractions all at the same time. But you made it through, Lyra said. Yes, but we were angry and tired. Our formations were broken. Some of our commanders were dead. The neat organized fleet that had left Valonian space was now a wounded animal limping toward Earth. Zekthor stopped pacing and looked directly at her. That was when we realized the humans had been planning this for months. Every battle we fought in their colonies had taught them something about our ships, our weapons, our tactics. They had been preparing Earth's defenses based on what they learned. What did you find when you reached Earth? A planet covered in weapons, not big platforms like we expected, but thousands of small installations hidden all over the surface. Cities that looked normal from space but were actually fortresses. Satellites that seemed to be for communication but were really gun platforms. The commander's voice grew quieter, and they had Admiral Kate Sullivan. Tell me about her, Lyra said. Sullivan was different from the other human commanders we had faced. She was older, maybe 60 years in human age. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, you could hear the steel in her voice. Zekthor sat down again. She did something no other enemy commander had ever done. She talked to us, not threats or demands, but actual conversation. She welcomed us to the Sol system and asked if we needed anything, food, water, medical supplies, for our wounded. That must have been confusing, Lyra said. It was terrifying. We were there to conquer her planet and she was offering to help us. Some of our commanders thought it was a trick. Others thought she was insane. But I thought she was the most dangerous human we had met. Why? Because she was not afraid of us. Morrison had been brave but desperate. Baker had been clever but angry. Torres and Murphy had been fierce but focused on their own battles. Sullivan was calm. She acted like she already knew how the war would end. Zekthor drank some water before continuing. Sullivan's first surprise was that she did not try to stop us from reaching Earth. She let us get close to the planet, close enough to see the cities and the people still living there. Then she started broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Stories. Human stories. She told us about their history, about wars they had fought among themselves, about disasters they had survived. She talked about human children playing in parks, about old people sitting in gardens, about families having dinner together. The old warrior's voice was thoughtful. She was showing us what we were trying to destroy. Not just a planet or a military target, but a civilization, a way of life. She made us see the humans not as enemies, but as people. Did that affect your soldiers? Lyra asked. More than I expected. Some of our crew started asking questions again. Why were we fighting these people? What would we gain by conquering them? What would happen to all those families Sullivan showed us? Zekthor stood and walked to the window. But Korthan was furious. He ordered all ships to stop listening to Sullivan's broadcasts. He said she was using psychological warfare to weaken our resolve. He commanded the fleet to attack immediately. What happened next? The Battle of Earth began, and it was unlike anything we had ever experienced. The commander's voice was filled with old pain. Sullivan did not just defend her planet. She turned the entire battle into a lesson. A lesson about what? A lesson about what humans would do to protect their home. Every attack we made, she countered not just with weapons but with words. She explained why each human soldier was fighting, what they were protecting, who they were dying for. Zekthor turned back to Lyra. Major Tony, Martinez commanded the lunar defense stations. When we attacked the moon, he could have simply fought back. Instead, he broadcast images of Earth as seen from the moon. Beautiful images of the blue planet, of clouds and oceans and continents. Then he crashed the entire moon base into our flagship. Lyra's eyes widened. He destroyed the moon base? All of it. Martinez and 3,000 human defenders died instantly, but they took Admiral Korthan and 5,000 Valonian crew with them. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing I had ever seen. The old commander was quiet for a moment. Before he died, Martinez sent one final message. He said he was sorry for taking so many lives, but he could not let us hurt the families living on Earth. He said he hoped someday our species could be friends instead of enemies. That must have been devastating for your fleet, Lyra said. It broke us. Not just because we lost our commander, but because we finally understood what we were fighting. We were not fighting soldiers or ships or weapons. We were fighting the love that humans had for each other, for their home, for their future. Zekthor sat down heavily. Commander Beth Parker led the final ground assault after Martinez died. She coordinated attacks from all over Earth's surface. But even as she fought us, she kept trying to save Valonian lives. She would warn our troops about dangerous areas, offer medical help to our wounded, try to arrange truces so both sides could recover their dead. She was fighting and helping at the same time? Lyra asked. That is what humans do. They can kill you and mourn for you at the same time. They can destroy your ship and then risk their lives to save your crew. They are the most contradictory species in the galaxy. The old warrior looked exhausted. The battle for Earth lasted 2 weeks. We could have won. We had more ships, better weapons, superior technology. But we could not break their spirit. Every human who died seemed to make the others fight harder. Every victory we achieved cost us more than we gained. Lyra watched as Commander Zekthor stared out the window for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Sadder, but also somehow lighter. After Admiral Korthan died, everything changed. The command structure broke down. Different. Ship captains had different ideas about what to do next. Some wanted to retreat. Some wanted to destroy Earth completely. Some wanted to keep fighting until every human was dead. What did you want? Lyra asked. I wanted to understand. For weeks I had been watching humans do impossible things. I had seen them sacrifice themselves for strangers. I had seen them fight, with broken bodies and never give up. I had seen them show mercy to enemies who were trying to kill them. Zekthor turned back to her. So I did something that no Valonian commander had ever done before. I contacted Admiral Sullivan directly and asked to meet with her. You arranged a meeting with the enemy commander? Lyra was surprised. Not just me. Captain Voresh from the cruiser Starhammer wanted to meet too. So did Commander Telak from the destroyer Nightwind. We were tired of fighting a war we did not understand. The old warrior sat down slowly. Sullivan agreed to meet us on a neutral station between Earth and Mars. She came alone with just 2 guards. We brought a full security team because we thought it might be a trap. But it was not a trap, Lyra said. No. Sullivan really wanted to talk. She met us in a conference room with big windows that looked out at Earth. The planet was beautiful from that distance, blue and white and green, like a jewel floating in space. Zekthor paused to drink some water. The first thing Sullivan did was apologize for all the Valonian soldiers who had died. She said she was sorry that our species had to meet as enemies, instead of friends. Then she asked us to tell her about our homes. Your homes? She wanted to know about Valonia Prime, about our families, about what we missed while we were fighting. For 2 hours we talked about everything except the war. She showed us pictures of her grandchildren. I showed her pictures of my mate and our young ones. The commander's voice grew softer. Then she asked us why we were really fighting, not the official reasons from the High Command, but our personal reasons. What did we hope to gain from conquering human space? What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that I did not know anymore. When the war started, I believed we were bringing civilization to primitive species. But humans were not primitive. They had art, music, literature, science. They loved their families just like we did. They wanted peace just like we did. Zekthor stood and walked around the room. Captain Voresh said something that surprised me. He said he was fighting because he was afraid. Afraid that if we did not conquer humans, they might conquer us someday. They were too dangerous to leave alone. What did Sullivan say to that? She laughed. Not mockingly, but sadly. She said humans were afraid of the same thing. They were fighting because they were scared of being enslaved or destroyed. She said, both our species were fighting because of fear, not because of real threats. The old warrior paused by the window. Then Sullivan asked us to imagine something different. What if our species became allies instead of enemies? What if we shared technology and knowledge instead of fighting over territory? What if we explored the galaxy together instead of trying to destroy each other? That must have been a radical idea for you, Lyra said. It was impossible to imagine at first. Valonians had always solved problems through conquest. If we wanted something, we took it. If someone threatened us, we destroyed them. The idea of cooperation was foreign to us. Zekthor sat back down. But Sullivan was patient. She explained how humans had learned to work together despite their differences. She told us about their history, how they had fought terrible wars among themselves but eventually learned to build peace. Did you believe her? I wanted to. But I was still a military officer with duties to my fleet. I told Sullivan that even if we wanted peace, the High Command would never accept it. 2. Many Valonian soldiers had died. The Empire would demand victory or revenge. The commander's expression grew thoughtful. That was when Sullivan told us about the human prisoners we had captured during the war. She said they had been talking to their Valonian guards, sharing stories, showing pictures of their families. Some of the guards had begun to question the war too. The same thing was happening on both sides, Lyra observed. Exactly. Humans and Valonians who spent time together as people instead of enemies started to see each other differently. Sullivan suggested we arrange more meetings, not between commanders, but between ordinary soldiers. Zekthor drank more water before continuing. Over the next month, we held dozens of small meetings. Human and Valonian crew members would meet on neutral ships to talk. They shared food, music, stories about their homes. They played games together and taught each other their languages. What did you learn from these meetings? We learned that we were more alike than different. Both species valued family, honor, and peace. Both species had histories of conflict and dreams of a better future. Both species were tired of fighting a war that seemed to have no end. The old warrior's voice grew stronger. But the most important thing we learned was from a young human pilot named Sam Roberts. He had been shot down during one of the early battles and spent 2 weeks as our prisoner before being exchanged. What did he tell you? Roberts said something that changed my whole understanding of the war. He said that humans did not fight us because they hated us. They fought us because they loved each other. Every human who died was someone's child, parent, friend, or lover. They could not let us hurt the people they cared about. Zekthor met Lyra's eyes. I realized then that Valonians fought for different reasons. We fought for glory, for the Empire, for advancement. But humans fought for love. That was why they were so hard to defeat. You can break a soldier's will to fight for glory, but you cannot break their will to fight for love. Did this realization change the war? Lyra asked. It began to. More and more Valonian commanders started questioning our mission. Colonel Telvar, who had been one of our most aggressive officers, arranged a private meeting with human Colonel Julia Davis. They talked for hours about the cost of war and the value of peace. Meanwhile, fighting continued in some sectors. But it was different now. Both sides started taking more prisoners instead of fighting to the death. Medical ships from both fleets began treating wounded enemies. Soldiers on both sides began looking for ways to avoid unnecessary killing. Zekthor stood and walked to the food table again. This time he actually ate some fruit. The turning point came when a group of human and Valonian engineers worked together to repair a damaged space station that had civilians from both species trapped inside. They cooperated to save lives. For 6 days, humans and Valonians worked side by side to repair life support systems and evacuate the station. They shared tools, knowledge, and expertise. Captain Lisa Park coordinated the human team while Commander Zekthor led the Valonian team. They saved over 1,000 lives. When the rescue was complete, both teams realized something important. We could build things together better than we could destroy things apart. Engineer Mike Foster from the human team said it best. He said, the station repair had accomplished more good in 6 days than the entire war had accomplished in 6 months. The old commander returned to his chair. After the station rescue, informal truces began breaking out all along the battle lines. Not official ceasefires, but agreements between local commanders to avoid unnecessary fighting. Both sides were looking for a way to end the war without losing honor. What about the High Command? Lyra asked. What about Earth's government? Both. Governments were under pressure from their own people. Valonian families were demanding to know why their sons and daughters were dying for empty planets. Human families were asking why peace talks had not begun. The war was becoming unpopular on both sides. Zekthor's voice grew sad again. But there were still hardliners on both sides who wanted to continue fighting. Some Valonian admirals believed that showing weakness would encourage other species to rebel. Some human generals believed that anything less than total victory would invite future attacks. The final test came when Admiral Kate Sullivan proposed something unprecedented. She suggested a joint mission where human and Valonian forces would work together to help a third species that was facing a natural disaster. A joint mission? Lyra was intrigued. The Cathari homeworld was being destroyed by solar flares from their star. Millions of people were going to die unless someone helped them evacuate. The Cathari had stayed neutral during our war, but they needed help desperately. Zekthor leaned forward. Sullivan proposed that human and Valonian fleets work together to save the Cathari people. It would be dangerous, require perfect coordination, and serve no military purpose. It would only save lives. Did the High Command agree? Some did. Others refused. In the end, about half of each fleet volunteered. For the mission, we spent 3 weeks evacuating Cathari cities under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. Solar radiation that could kill anyone not in heavy shielding. Gravitational distortions that made navigation almost impossible. Commander Zekthor was quiet for a long time. Lyra could see that telling his story had been difficult, but also important to him. When he finally spoke again, his voice was peaceful. The formal peace negotiations took place on a space station, called Unity. It was built specifically for the talks, with sections designed for both human and Valonian needs. The talks lasted for 6 months. 6 months is a long time, Lyra said. Peace is harder than war. In war, you just fight until someone wins or everyone dies. In peace, you have to solve problems, share resources, and learn to trust people who used to be your enemies. Zekthor stood and walked to the window one more time. I was part of the negotiation team. So was Admiral Sullivan, Captain Sam Roberts, Colonel Julia Davis, and many others from both sides. We had all fought against each other, and now we had to figure out how to live together. What were the biggest challenges? Lyra asked. Trust. Many Valonians still believed humans were too dangerous to be allowed independence. Many humans still believed Valonians would attack again as soon as they recovered from the war. Both sides had lost too many friends to forgive easily. The old commander turned back to her. But we had something more powerful than fear or anger. We had hope. The Kethari rescue had shown us what we could accomplish together. Every person involved in those negotiations had seen human and Valonian crews working side by side to save lives. Tell me about the treaty, Lyra said. The Treaty of Unity was different from any agreement the Valonian Empire had ever signed. Instead of conquest or surrender, it established partnership. Both species would keep their own territories, but we would share technology, trade goods, and help each other when needed. Zekthor sat down and smiled slightly. The humans insisted on one unusual clause. Any Valonian who wanted to live in human space would be welcome, and any human who wanted to live in Valonian space would be welcome too. They said the best way to prevent future wars was for our people to know each other as neighbors. Did many people take advantage of that? Lyra asked. More than anyone expected. Within 5 years, there were human communities on 12 Valonian worlds and Valonian communities on 8 human worlds. Children from both species grew up together, learned each other's languages, and formed friendships that their parents never could have imagined. The old warrior's expression grew thoughtful. I moved to Earth 7 years after the war ended. My mate and our young ones came with me. We wanted to understand the people we had fought against. What was it like living among humans? Strange at first, humans are much more emotional than Valonians. They laugh louder, cry more easily, and show their feelings in ways that seemed excessive to us. But we learned that this emotional openness was one of their greatest strengths. Zekthor paused to eat some more fruit. My neighbor was a human, veteran named Carl Brooks. He had fought in the Battle of Earth, lost his brother during the lunar station attack. When he learned I was a Valonian commander, I thought he would hate me. But he did not, Lyra said. He invited me to dinner. He wanted to hear about the war from my perspective, to understand why we had fought. I told him about Valonian culture, about our belief that strength came from conquest. He told me about human culture, about their belief that strength came from protecting others. The old commander's voice grew warmer. Carl and I became close friends. We would spend hours talking about our experiences, sharing stories about our families, teaching each other about our different ways of thinking. His children called me Uncle Zek, and my young ones called him Uncle Carl. That must have been healing for both of you, Lyra observed. It was more than healing. It was education. Carl taught me that humans were not the violent savages our propaganda had described. They were people who loved deeply, who would sacrifice anything for their families and friends, who believed that everyone deserved a chance at happiness. Zekthor stood and began walking around the room again. I also became friends with other human veterans. Major Tony Martinez's widow, Maria, taught me about human art and music. Colonel Janet Murphy and I started a foundation that helped orphans from both species find new families. What about your own military career? Lyra asked. I retired from the Valonian Navy 3 years after the war ended. But I did not stop serving. The Treaty of Unity created a joint peacekeeping force made up of both human and Valonian crews. I joined as an advisor, helping to train mixed crews for missions throughout the galaxy. The old warrior sat back down. Those joint crews were remarkable. Humans brought creativity, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. Valonians brought discipline, technical expertise, and strategic thinking. Together, we were more effective than either species could be alone. Did you ever go back to military action? Lyra asked. Several times. But now we fought together instead of against each other. We helped the Zephyr people defend against raiders. We assisted in disaster relief on a dozen worlds. We even mediated conflicts between other species who were at war. Zekthor's voice filled with pride. The most important mission was when the Krextar Empire tried to invade human space 15 years after our war ended. They thought humans would be weakened by making peace with us. They were very wrong. What happened? The moment the Krextar attacked, the Valonian Empire declared war on them. Not because of the treaty, but because humans had become our friends. Admiral Sullivan, who was still commanding Earth's defenses, worked with Admiral Morith to coordinate our response. The old commander smiled. The Krextar had never faced a combined human-Valonian force. They expected to fight humans who were brave but technologically inferior. Instead, they found human tactics combined with Valonian firepower. They expected to face Valonians who were powerful but predictable. Instead, they found Valonian discipline combined with human creativity. The war lasted only 6 months. The Krextar surrendered and agreed to a peace treaty that included protections for all the smaller species in that region of space. It was the first time in galactic history that two former enemies had united so completely to defend each other. Lyra made notes on her tablet. How has the relationship between humans and Valonians developed since then? Beyond anything we could have imagined during the war. We have joint colonies, mixed crews on exploration ships, and scientific projects that combine our different strengths. My own grandson is half human, half Valonian. He represents the future of both our species. Zekthor's voice grew serious. But the most important change is not political or military. It is personal. Millions of humans and Valonians now know each other as individuals, not as stereotypes or enemies. They work together, live together, and care about each other. What? Would you tell other species about humans? Lyra asked. The old warrior thought for a moment. I would tell them to be very careful, not because humans are evil or dangerous, but because they are powerful in ways that are hard to understand. They will fight harder for their friends than most species will fight for themselves. They will sacrifice everything to protect people they care about. But I would also tell them that humans are the best allies you can have. They are loyal, creative, and brave. They will share their knowledge, help with your problems, and stand with you against any threat. The key is to approach them as friends, not as enemies. Zekthor stood and walked to the table where Lyra had placed her recording device. I would tell them that making humans your enemies is the worst mistake you can make. But making humans your friends is the best thing that can happen to your species. Any final thoughts? Lyra asked. The old commander picked up the recording device and looked at it thoughtfully. This device will carry my words to people throughout the galaxy. Some of them might be planning wars against humans or other species. I want them to understand something important. He set the device back down carefully. War is easy to start but hard to stop. It destroys not just ships and planets, but families and futures. The Valonian Empire learned this lesson the hard way. We thought we were strong because we could conquer others. But real strength comes from building something together, not tearing something apart. Humans taught us that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but turning your enemies into friends. They showed us that the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose peace over war when both are possible. Zekthor looked directly at Lyra. I have lived through war and peace. I have seen the worst and best that both our species can do. I can tell you with certainty that cooperation is always better than conquest, that friendship is always stronger than fear. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats that no single species can face alone. Pirates, natural disasters, diseases, and hostile empires. But when species work together, when they share their strengths and cover each other's weaknesses, they can overcome any challenge. The old warrior smiled one final time. Humans have a saying, united we stand, divided we fall. The human-Valonian War taught both our species that this saying is true. Together we are stronger than either of us could be alone. Together, we can build a galaxy where war is rare and peace is common.